Okay, all right. Well, look, thank you very, very much for coming on, Anna. And also, I think it's important, isn't it, that, there is at least one media outlet where you can come on and express your views without fear of being kind of hounded out and called some kind of deranged anti-vaxxer. And
yeah, but you GB News, you've got to be really careful.
People may well not agree with it, and that's fine.
Your last guest just said immigrants can come in, but they can't change society. And you went, that's great to end that conversation with you. I think that's awful. You guys, GB News, you've got to be more careful about being impartial, or you're just going to be seen as activists.
Now, just very quickly, I promised I was going to just ask one question about Iceland. You were a former ambassador to Iceland. What was the best thing for you about being the ambassador to Iceland?
Representing my country, representing the interests of my country, working for my country. It's also a wonderful place.
Beautiful. Stunning, isn't it?
I served there twice, actually. Once as the number 2 and the second time as ambassador.
And you were one of the first ethnic minority ambassadors as well.
I was, yes. I remember coming here and not being able to speak English and being set all sorts of words to say to test me as to whether or not I could speak English. And I do remember not speaking English and not being a part of the community almost. This is why it's so important that those who come here to settle in this country, first and foremost, they've got to learn the language and they've got to accept what they're letting themselves in for. Accept the country as it is, not try and change it.
Well, there you go. I tell you what, a fantastic way to finish. Thank you very much, Alp. And a fellow Cypriot as well, from what I understand.
I am indeed, yes. Turkish Cypriot.
Well, I'm on the Greek side. The real we're getting on, so surely everything's all right. No. Right. Oh, thank you very much. Alp Everett there, of course, who fronts up Migration Watch UK, and as we've been speaking about there, has been ambassador of this country as well.
Yes, indeed. Now, the Together Declaration Group, which campaigns against vaccination passports, is demonstrating outside at number 10 Downing Street today. The organisation has previously released a petition calling on the government to reject further lockdown restrictions and attracted more than 200,000 signatures.
Yes, in fact, I believe it might be up to 300,000 now, actually. The group plans to deliver a petition with a core group of supporters, followed by a wider day of mass action on Saturday. So joining us now is Anna Brees, founder of AgainstVaccinePassports.com and former BBC and ITV journalist. Welcome to the programme. Thank you very much. So what are you hoping to achieve with all of this, then?
Well, it's a very exciting time, I think, at the moment. The great British public have spoken, and I think as long as we stick to these very important issues of vaccine mandates and vaccine passports, we will have political support and mainstream media support. The conversations I have, I'm in a WhatsApp group with mainstream media journalists, some still working in the mainstream media, some have retired, also politicians. When it comes to vaccine mandates and vaccine passports, the great British people do not want either of them. And the Together Declaration and Alan Miller, I think this is the protest footage you're showing from outside the Senedd in Wales.
So what do you think, given there will be inevitably more variants in the future, and the government doesn't seem to have a sort of long-term strategy for how they're going to react, a blueprint for how they're going to react every time a new variant pops up, say in a couple of months?
Inevitably there are going to be new variants. I don't understand why you said that.
Pardon?
You said inevitably they're going to be new variants. Yes, inevitably the
virus will mutate.
Oh, they'll probably naturally be mutated.
So there will... I mean, that is epidemiologically sort of, that's the reality of it. So what do you want to happen every time there's a new variant? What if the next variant is, not as mild as Omicron was? What should we do then? What is it you would want to see every time the government does have a COVID scare? Because that will eventually happen again.
OK, all right. Well, look, thank you very, very much for coming on, Anna. And also, I think it's important, isn't it, that there is at least one media outlet where you can come on and express your views without fear of being kind of hounded out and called some kind of deranged anti-vaxxer. And
yeah, but you've got to be really careful.
People may not agree with it.
Your last guest just said immigrants can come in, but they can't change society. And you went, that's great to end that conversation with you. I think that's awful. You guys, GB News, you've got to be more careful about being impartial, or you're just going to be seen as activists.
That could do with a bit of a breakdown. For starters, GB News has an honest conservative bias. It is open about being editorially conservative while claiming to objectively and fairly report the news, something we can all judge for ourselves if it does or doesn't. The BBC has a dishonest left-wing bias. It claims to be impartial and is lying through its back teeth. There are still pockets of integrity at the BBC, like John Ware, who did the panorama expose of the anti-Semitism of Corbyn's Labour, and Nicky Campbell, who's generally a bit of a lefty, but he's a people's lefty who gives everyone a fair crack. But overall, the BBC has been captured by the Marxist left and its many fellow travellers. Charlie State sneering at a minister of the Crown for having the Union Jack in his office, and Naga Munchetty later liking anti-conservative tweets in relation to that, was one of the tipping points that got GB News started as a counterweight to the BBC's far-left anti-British toxicity. Secondly, let's give this a second listen.
And I think as long as we stick to these very important issues of vaccine mandates and vaccine passports, we will have political support and mainstream media support. The conversations I have, I'm in a WhatsApp group with mainstream media journalists, some still working in the mainstream media, some have retired.
So, this is an activist journalist bragging about how she's bringing mainstream journalists on board with her activism, chiding Patrick Christys and GB News for running the risk of being seen as activist. She was given a fair run, asked reasonably challenging questions which she was giving a free rein to answer that she would never have had on the BBC, and then she bites the hand that feeds her. Why would she have done that? This is my speculation, and you decide for yourselves if it's reasonable or not. Patrick Christys and Mercy Muroki and GB News as a whole stand full square against anti-Semitism. Anna Brees is a screaming anti-Semite. The other year, on John Wedge's Facebook page, I saw her love heart, not like, but love heart, a comment that said Tommy Robinson is a Zionist shill. So it didn't come as any surprise to me sometime later to see her trying to rubbish John Ware's panorama documentary expose of the anti-Semitism of Jeremy Corbyn's Labour. Jeremy Corbyn has supported genocidal anti-Semites and Holocaust deniers against the Jewish state his entire political life. Only a visceral anti-Semite like him would ride shotgun for him to try to cover up an expose of his blatant anti-Semitism. The ex-British ambassador who now heads Migrant Watch, who was interviewed before her, he was speaking about stopping this invasion of undocumented Muslim immigrants into Britain, gaming the asylum system. Could it be that Anna Brees is keen to see undocumented Muslim immigrants invading our nation because she knows many of them will be fellow anti-Semites? Whether it was anti-Jewish bigotry or not, her behaviour was completely
David looks very busy, but he's just there. Can you see? I think you want to speak to David, don't you? You want to hear from David.